One. So this particular story actually happened back in 1997, December 20th, 1997. There was a family, mom, dad, and three siblings. The youngest was 6, the middle child was 7, and the oldest daughter was 9. They experienced child abuse and home abuse throughout their life, so they kind of became immune to the tension and the hate. It was kind of one of those things where the kids didn't know that they were supposed to say anything because, again, the violence just became their norm. Teachers, community, people involved in the community kind of figured something was going on in the household, but again, the children never felt that there was a red flag because mom always said that it was okay. So they never felt that there was a need to reach out for help. There was never a need to ask for help because you don't know that you need help until someone tells you that you need help or you feel that you need the help. So this was late one night, December 19th. I hope I tell our story right. Forgive me if I don't. December 19th, the children and their mom had actually just left a church service where they were practicing for a Christmas play because December is the time of the holidays. And they got home late, and the mom had set the girls down to do their hair. The youngest girl had just finished getting her hair done and ready for Sunday service, and next was the oldest daughter's turn. And in walked their father, who was intoxicated, probably high, which was not anything, again, out of the norm. And about 10 minutes after he made it in, his eyes were piercing red, and the kids already knew that it was probably going to be a drama-filled night, but again, it was nothing new. So about 10 minutes after he made it upstairs, he called the mom upstairs, and she kind of figured it was going to be a rough night, but again, they stuck it up, they moved on. That night, though, was a little different. The kids, the 6-year-old daughter, the 7-year-old son, and the 9-year-old daughter heard the screaming, they heard the yelling, and again, it was nothing new. But that night, it felt and sounded a little different. They said that they recall hearing their mom screaming out for help. And of course, that 6-year-old, being the innocent child, wanted to call the cops, which she had done in the past, but she remembered that once Daddy got out of jail, it wasn't a pretty sight when he got home. So she didn't call the cops, she didn't do anything. They kind of just let it pass by. The yelling turned into screaming, the screaming turned into scuffling, and then there was nothing. The kids heard like this silence, and then there was this mysterious drag across the floor. So moments later, the father came downstairs, stumbled downstairs, and looked at all of the kids and told them each that you know what time it is. So they went to bed because they presumed that's what he wanted them to do. So the two girls actually shared a room together, and they were woke up out of their sleep by a flashlight. It was actually a cop, another cop out there doing their job now. It was like a cop waking them up with the flashlight asking where the light was. So the girls were instructed to get up, get dressed, and head downstairs. Well, the youngest girl is very nosy, and still is to this day, bless her heart, love her to death. And she saw that there was tape across her mom's door, and she was questioning, what that was. But moments later, they went downstairs and they joined their middle brother in an ambulance. I don't know the time. I don't recall the time that passed, but the three siblings sat in the ambulance, and their oldest brother, who was 19 at the time, came to their rescue. So you can only imagine these three innocent, scared kids felt somewhat of a relief to see a face that they knew. But his face was different. He looked distressed. He looked angry. He looked worried. So the oldest brother came to their rescue and took the kids to his home. And there was his father, which they all shared the same mom, but had to have a different father. And his father, he's a well put together man. He's a very, very, very well respected man, and that always seems to have it together, always has the right answers. The old head, you can't really tell anything because they have it all together type of person, that's him. And the kids were kind of confused to see him looking as confused as he was. He instructed all the kids to have a seat. He placed his hands in his pocket, and he looked up at all the kids and said, well, kids, not only did your mom and your dad get into an argument tonight, but he killed her. The oldest sister ran to her oldest brother's arms and started crying. That 7-year-old brother then followed, And then there was this innocent 6-year-old who didn't quite understand what was going on. All she heard was kill, and she saw that her siblings were crying, so she thought the most appropriate thing to do was to get up and start crying. I actually met this young lady. I was about 17 years old. Again, we met in high school, and she shared her story with me, and I was inspired by her advocacy with domestic violence awareness. It wasn't until one day I went home with this young lady, and she broke down. It was 11 years later. She cried. She had hit rock bottom. She was tired of feeling like it was her fault. She was tired of feeling the guilt, the anger, and the hurt. And she just had reached a point where she wanted to be free. And she knew that in order to be free, she had to truly, wholeheartedly submit herself first to Christ and understand that if she wanted to be free, that there had to be some sort of forgiveness. When I turned 17 and I had that conversation with myself, that 6-year-old version of me in that story, I realized that in order for me to become free, I had to embrace and accept the fact that my mom was not coming back, that my siblings and I were exactly where we needed to be when it happened, and that regardless of the hand that we were dealt, we still have a responsibility on this side of this earthly kingdom. That 6-year-old in the story was obviously me. That 7-year-old in the story was my older brother. That 9-year-old was my oldest sister, who has a baby on the way. And that oldest brother was actually turned out to be my legal guardian, my oldest brother, Brooks Bryan, who is still my biggest hero to this day. Moving into my healing, I understood that, again, I had a sole responsibility, and that was to be who God had created me to be, but I didn't see that because I was so blinded by the pain, the hurt. How could someone who allegedly loved me, my biological father, take something that was so precious to me? But I then realized that in order to move forward, I feel, in my opinion, freedom or forgiveness is just freedom misspelled. I actually had the pleasure of meeting and seeing my father for the first time back in 2012, since the incident happened back in 1997. I had this long, beautiful speech that I was going to present to him to let him know that I forgive you. You are still my father, and I still have to honor you because that is my role as a daughter in Christ first and foremost. And my siblings and I, we all went, my siblings being my sister and my brother, and we had to go to what was called the infirmary to visit him. And I'm going to pass by. That's just the Lord letting us know He's listening. So we all sat and we waited for my dad to show up, and he was wheeled in a wheelchair. He did not look like himself. I did not recognize who he was. Emotions were at an all-time high, and of course that long, eloquent speech that I wanted to present to him completely went out of the door. I ultimately wanted him to know that I forgave him, but from the emotions and from the look on his face, he understood that we forgave him.